Been asked to ask all.
Preceding this 10-year effort by Parks and Wildlife, Parks and Wildlife was already engaged in doing great research and science. And between the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, Hart Institute, River Systems Institute, we have the best knowledge of how our water works and all these occult and mysterious aspects of anybody, of any state in the United States. There's a reason why Larry is in Corpus Christi, but he's going over to take care of business in Mississippi and Louisiana. We know what the science is, but there is a huge disconnect between public policy and implementing that knowledge and putting it to work, and putting it to work for all of Texas, not just for a few, not for big cities, for everybody. And that's what I'm waiting for, is to see our leadership on the political side take that science and do something good with it, rather than something as a baseball bat to beat up groundwater districts.
Carter, the research that you all have done show, though, that the projections on the impact on endangered species have actually been low. You've actually seen a more dramatic situation than you all had expected. Isn't that right?
Well, it certainly depends upon what endangered species you're talking about. Right. And I guess, two observations about the Endangered Species Act, or three really. I mean, one, no doubt, it has its place and is a very valuable tool. But really, when we're thinking about it, the most important things we can be doing is taking proactive measures and investing to keep species off of the endangered species list in the first place. And then secondly, when they are on that list, taking the appropriate actions to get them off the list. There's no honor in keeping a species on the endangered species list languishing forever. Right. So keeping them off in the first place is critically important and a major focus of ours. And then if they get on it, working overtime to ensure good conservation is going on to get them off the list or get delisted.
Got it. So we're approaching the time when I want to throw this open for questions to the audience, but I want to ask one last kind of speed round question to each of you on the panel before we do that. So you have a couple of legislators here, Representative Howard, possibly others have trickled in the time we've been sitting here and talking. So speak to them directly. If there was one bit of legislative action that you could will to occur that would have the most positive impact on this issue, what would it be? Let me start with Dr. McKinney and end with Carter.
Thanks for starting with
me. No pressure, buddy.
My first admonition and wish is that these issues would not be fall into that partisan trap. That these are issues that are important to all of us. It doesn't matter what party you're in or whether you're conservative or liberal or what. These issues are concerns that affect all of us. So, trying to put legislation together that really makes sure that we balance between all those needs, between business, industry, municipalities, and the environment. That's what we have to hit. We have to hit that balance. If we don't do it, if we fail in any of those points, then it is really bad for the future of Texas. So that's what I would say.
So there's no specific bit of legislation or issue that you would want to identify?
No, not now.
Okay, that was
a
pretty artful dodge. I thought that was good.
Well
done, sir. Mary.
I know Mary will have plenty of time.
Maybe she'll have two.
I have a don't do it.
Okay,
don't do it.
A not-to-do list is often as important as a to-do list.
And that's really to mess with the current groundwater ownership doctrine. It's a little bit messy as it is, but I think we can work with a fair and balanced way of the rule of capture overlain by local groundwater districts, so don't mess with it.
Don't mess with that. All right, Andrew.
I couldn't agree with that more, but I would also say that the legislature could well look for additional incentives to encourage people to do the right thing. What about property tax relief for rural landowners that are conserving and protecting recharge areas or watersheds?
That's actually sounds like the kind of thing that is attract both sides, if to the degree that you can keep both sides together, right?
Absolutely.
That's good. Joe Nick.
I would just say right now, don't do anything to punish groundwater districts. And in fact, if they are faced with legal actions, take that into account. Maybe that should be the state should be offering some kind of defense, because groundwater districts that are trying to do the right thing are spending way too much time fending off lawsuits and not enough time working on the science. And the science still is our best tool. Texas, for all the loss that we've discussed today, is a wonderfully biodiverse place, more so than just about anywhere in North America. And I want to keep that biodiversity. And I think one way, one tool is Let the local folks look after their local issues. And when it comes to groundwater, that is critical for the future of all water in Texas.
All right, David.
I've got to do two, but they're real
Sure,
quick.
that's fine.
One of them we've already done. In SB 3, we directed the state in the policy section of SB 3, it is the policy of the state of Texas to develop programs to implement land stewardship practices and keep good land stewards on the land. It's there. It's the policy of the state of Texas. And so far, there's no programs that have been developed beyond what existed in 2007. That's the first thing. The second thing is I disagree on not tinkering with the ownership of groundwater. And for this reason, I want to tinker with it enough to make sure that the playing field is level for everyone. For example, when I go to the groundwater district, which I support completely, when I go down to the groundwater district and try to defend the water that comes out of my springs, out of our family springs, I want those rights to be equal to the city of San Antonio's well field. If I don't have equal rights to protect springs that have served our family for 6 generations against San Antonio's well fields, I lose. The biggest, meanest dogs drink all the water.
That's true. Carter, as the only one of the 6 who's going to probably have to go up and, consider this is committee of the whole week, so let's consider this a committee of the whole.
Well, and I guess my
Thank you,
counsel
Kay.
is keep the faith on the environmental flows process that came out of SB 3. It's messy, it's contentious, it's difficult, just like any kind of a multiple stakeholder process is. But you have very good, committed people working on it in each basin, and it's imperative that we keep our eye on the big picture there and keep that going. The temptation when the tough gets going in these kind of things is to look for another framework, but we need to keep moving there.
All right, well, this is a great panel. We could go on a lot longer with just the panelists. Before we open it up for questions, let's give these guys a hand. What a great conversation. Be nice if every conversation had this much substance to it, huh? We have about 12 or 15 minutes that we can use to take questions from the audience. If you want, you can direct the question to the whole panel. You can direct the question to an individual panelist. Panelists, feel free to jump in and answer somebody else's question if you see fit. We keep the good discussion going. Sir, I'll call on people. My eyes are bad. I apologize in advance. Sir.
I had one comment, if I heard quite a bit of do the right thing, do the right thing. It's an interesting situation we're in Texas. The population's growing. I'm a coastal resident. Most of my friends along the coast want us to blow up all the dams to make sure everything flows to the Gulf. I talked to Andy about this yesterday. But if you're a city like San Antonio, one of the better conservers of water, as they learn to reuse and figure out ways because of the water problems that they have, that's going to mean less downstream flows. You mentioned the downstream flow issue and how the legislature addressed it. The legislature anticipated consensus on downstream flows, which doesn't help maybe the coastal residents' position because consensus doesn't get enough water for the whooping crane or the spoonbills or what have you. Yet that was what was envisioned. And what you're really dealing with is a state that's kind of so big that we have a variety of interests when doing the right thing might mean something to someone in Lubbock or the Panhandle. It's maybe something completely different in San Antonio Bay or the Laguna Madre. I just thought maybe I'd throw that out there and see what your thoughts are on that, one. And then two, point sources, as we regulate point sources, but as non-point sources continue to crop up, total maximum daily load issues, some areas, including the Houston area, bacteria levels are high year-round. We're mandated to reduce those bacteria levels and reduce those sources of pollution. And the point sources are one thing we regulate, but the non-point sources, that comes from leaking septic tanks or what have you out in the hill country, anywhere else, are going to continue to accumulate as well as we bring more and more people in. And I just thought y'all didn't really hit on those topics. I thought maybe y'all might want to expand on that.
Anybody want to take the commissioner's
I think
point?
the commissioner is exactly right. I think one of the most important things that all of us need to remember is that everybody lives downstream from somebody else. If you live in Houston and you take water from the Trinity River, every drop of it has already been through the wastewater treatment plants of Dallas and Fort Worth. And so this is an issue in which we're all tied together, and we have to work together, because whatever we do in our watersheds is going to affect somebody that's downstream of us, and I think that's very well said.
I was just going to say, that's why we pay you the big bucks, Mr. Chairman.
Is it still the big bucks?
Resolve those issues when there isn't consensus. I mean, Senate Bill 3 process, the environmental flows process did, I think, envision maybe more consensus coming out of the first basin groups, and I think one basin at the science level reached that, the other basin had a little bit of a split. This is our first time around. But Senate Bill 3 also did provide the commission with the authority to go ahead and try to balance those interests on its own and adopt the standards. And I don't envy your position, but I think there was some back of the mind thought that maybe perfect consensus wouldn't be achieved in Texas.
And I would kind of add this, and I appreciate that, Chairman, your statement very much, being from the coast down there with you now. We are as concerned about the water making it all the way down to the end, because really no one lives downstream from us except the open Gulf. But I would say that if we can reach some basis of flows for the rivers, that will hopefully that flow is going to come to the basin estuaries. That's that link. So that does help, and so there's a linkage there. And if we can make progress on one, we can certainly help the other. So.
Okay. That's outstanding. I want to address that, because that's an outstanding point, and it's not only upstream, downstream, it's urban, rural. Somehow we have to figure out, because the majority of the voters, and after we get done redistricting and implementing the new census data, it's going to be even worse. I say worse from a rural landowner's perspective. How do we figure out how to balance the needs of both urban, where all the voters are, and the rural areas where there are no voters, without destroying the economies of both of those areas? That is a huge challenge. So it's not only upstream, downstream, it's urban, rural as well. It's the users versus suppliers. How do we figure it out without harming either one?
It's a very thoughtful way to put it.